used a number of finishes, including marine spar varnish or even UV protected polyurethane. I like the fast drying stuff though. Now, the way I like to finish things is I basically start in one place, work from, in this case, right to left, uh, on one side, one view of it, if you will. And when you have that completely done, then you turn it 90 degrees and do the same thing on that view. Now what we have here is a box that's already been stained. It's natural stain. The problem with finish is that while it's probably the easiest thing to do in terms of the processes we need to do to our chuck box, it's also the easiest to screw up because you can't necessarily see where it is. It's quite possible to run a brush over something and not actually leave any finish on it. So you really have to pay attention. You go over things a couple times, at least I do. And just like with the stain, we're going to hit the seams really hard. We're going to hit any holes, any dados, all of the end grain. Same exact game. And again, it's just like, imagine yourself as a raindrop and where might you end up going, and that's really where you want to finish the most. As you can see, I'm not being particularly careful here. In fact, I'm really trying to be very liberal with how much I put on. Now again, I'm going to start in the upper right, just kind of work it across. A lot of end grain there I just hit that end grain on that end piece, and then we're going to hit those dados real hard. All the seams, dados. So I've kind of framed what I'm going to finish now. The area that I'm working on, which is that end, obviously. Nothing wrong with going over something twice. You may not have had the brush full first time you hit it, and thus left a minimal finish on it. Now really, I think it's best to put it on across the grain and then smooth it out with the grain. And that's just what I was taught over the years. I'm guessing that that's probably a pretty standard technique, especially when we're doing water protection, trying to get that finish down in every little nook and cranny of that box. Of course, the process would be exactly the same, whether if you'd used a walnut stain or a redwood stain, doesn't really matter. You're going to do the same thing. And I call it a water protection finish because we're only going to do one coat. We're just going to be very, very thorough about it and make sure that we get stain down into every little nook and cranny. I guess at some point I should point out that if you use your box a lot, and boy, I sure hope you do, and by a lot, I go camping 20, 25 times a year in a standard year, sometimes more, sometimes less. If I've got something big going on that year, like a move or what have you, then um, I'll only go camping like 10 or 12 times, but there are 10 or 12 standard campouts that I really, really try to do every year. Come hell or high water, I try to do them. But occasionally you can't. Occasionally you just got too much going on in other directions, or maybe you're sick or something like that when an event comes around. But usually I actually go camping more like 20 or 25, even 30 times a year. And one or two of those campouts will be for, I don't know, week or longer. And so you have all these different kinds of conditions that you're out under. And when you do it that much, after about, well, in my case, about 5 years, I have to refinish the box. Uh, but I live in a pretty dry climate. Doesn't take much water. Uh, I can go a few years and never hit a drop of water on a chuck box. But the thing that gets me is ultraviolet light because I camp a lot at very high elevation. Uh, but when I notice that it starts, look at that run right there. Okay, we're going to try to get that run off of there. But the truth of the matter is, you will probably still have some runs in this, by the way. Even after you go back and very carefully and dutifully try to pull off any of the excess stain with your brush, finish with your brush, you'll probably still end up with some runs. Now I just take some strips of one thing or another and put them underneath it. Like I said, though, at elevation, high altitudes, the UV light can just really very quickly uh, deteriorate a finish. So, you might find it after a pretty minimal amount of time, you've got to refinish it. Now, you notice what I'm doing with that brush? That's where the brad nails are. As I'm going along and I'm just making absolutely sure that every brad nail, especially on the top, because if it gets wet, that's where it's going to get wet, has finish that is soaked down into the little hole that's made by the nail. Then we're going to smooth it out. Alright, right now I'm probably just going around looking to see if I see any little runs or pile-ups of finish and just kind of smooth them all out. You can use the light. The reflection of the light will really help you out here. I have a piece of styrofoam set up behind this, which makes it a little easier to see the shine on it. And I'm going to say that that's pretty much it. That is a finished box just by itself. You'll notice that the center partition is not in it, and that just makes it easier to finish. That's why I left it out. Now, if you got an unfinished box, you're probably going to notice that you do have a partition in it. And we're just going to do the same thing with every part on this box, paying particular attention to the end grain, to any little holes we may have created with our brad nailer, etc., etc. Have fun with it.